right now. This Hangout on Air is live. It is the Audible Live. Cecil Lammey, Sigmund Bloom, Matt Waldman, Dr. Jene Bramel here. What lightning delay. We can be your two-screen experience. We can be the one screen that you're looking at and interacting with the most, firing up in the chat room. Of course, kicking things off with an injury discussion across the NFL. And Dr. Jene, as we heard in the waiver wire show, there's quite a few injuries to get through. But first, an Andrew Luck update, Dr. Jene.
Yeah, it's that time of the week again, isn't it? I think we talked on the live show on Sunday that it looked like he was getting closer and closer to being able to practice. That unfortunately did not happen this week. So the Ian Rappaport tweet on Sunday morning that suggested that Luck would be able to go in Week 6 against Tennessee is looking less and less likely. I still think we need to see him a week or two of relatively non-contact practice throwing to his receivers, and then maybe another week or two of contact practice. So you're looking at 3 to 4 weeks of practice before he's cleared to come back to get into a game. And that puts us kind of at Week 7 right now. And maybe he's been doing a little bit more on the side that we've not been able to see. But if he's not cleared to do much in practice, they have some concerns yet of putting him in a situation where there could be a little bit of a setback. So I think it's a minimum of 2 weeks, and Week 6 is pushing it at this point. The good news is that he's getting closer and closer, and he will be back at some point. But I don't think we're going to see him for another couple of weeks at least.
Gene, did I get my Ty Montgomery sell high trade offers out too late? Oh, I could have. I got them all out this afternoon.
Yeah,
it was too late.
Broken
ribs.
Well, that's the thing, right? I think that's what you don't like about that tweet from Ian Rappaport a second ago is ribs is in more than one. So rib cartilage can be painful. Broken ribs can be painful. Broken rib can be painful. But when there's more going on there, you wonder about it's not really a stability question, but any movement is going to be a little bit sore. It's not that it's an easy thing to tape up or brace or pad anyway, but it's when it's more than one rib, you worry that you're likely to have a little bit longer term absence. And it's nice that it's a Thursday night game and he's got some time to recover yet, but you just wonder how long it's going to take for him to get back. We'd have to sort of see how this goes. Definitely not coming back tonight. I think the question is whether or not he's going to be able to manage pain well enough to come back in the next game. And 10 days is nice. We'll have to see how this goes.
Aaron Rodgers is going to throw for 50 touchdowns this year.
Yeah, it's going to be a race with him and Tom Brady, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, all I can say is that I'm glad I didn't take Matt Batante's offer for Ty Montgomery earlier this morning in our league, but Melvin Gordon. Knee bruise, bone bruise. How serious is it?
His bone bruise is not as serious as what Melvin Gordon is going through. It was a situation where something happened in practice, and it doesn't seem to be a big concern. He did not practice on Wednesday, did a little bit more in practice today. Anthony Lynn said he was going to fully practice today. That's not the way he's listed on the injury report, but he did more and more, and Gordon has been kind of adamant all along that he's going to play, and he tried to get back in last week's game, and I guess they just didn't like enough of what they were seeing from him to be able to trust him to come back, but I'm not seeing anything right now that makes me think he will not be able to play. The question is will he see his usual workload or not, and it would go a long way to us being comfortable that that's the case if he's able to get a full practice in on Friday. And like so often when we talk on these Thursday night shows, that's going to be the key. We'll see how these guys practice tomorrow and how confident they seem to be in the locker room, and then we'll roll from there through the weekend.
Yeah, more running back injuries because I want to know about Jay Ajayi in London, of course, this week against the Saints.
Yeah, it's a long flight. You wonder sometimes whether or not that's going to play a role in his rest and recovery. I think the good thing about Ajayi this week in comparison to last week is he's not coming off of 30 touches. Meaning the Dolphins, were comfortable enough to return him to a full practice today on Thursday. And so I would expect you'd be able to see that again tomorrow. He's likely to fully practice on Friday and be a little bit closer to be able to tolerate his regular workload. Now, coming back from London, you wonder if that's a little bit of an issue. We'll sort of see how things progress with him, but I don't think there's any indication that he's not going to be able to play, and hopefully he'll be a little bit more, he'll be better able to play this week than previously.
Gene, we have to set our lineups on Sunday morning.
Yeah.
Without Doug Baldwin Sunday night. They say he's going to play. He was, and it's interesting. I wonder if does Doug Baldwin in his interviews about the protest issues, does that count towards the media availability that you sometimes look as a sign that a player is going to play? So I want to lay it out like this. If he doesn't practice on Friday, we're not going to put him in our lineup. if he has limited practice on Friday, if he has a full practice on Friday. The team is saying he's going to play. Let's assume they're not going to change that. So give us the matrix of whether we should put Baldwin in our lineup or not.
I think we're okay for now. Seattle's going to give us an indication tomorrow, right? So what you wonder is, are we going to see what we saw with Jimmy Graham last week and so many other Seattle players over time, which is he going to fully practice on Friday after not doing much at all? And yeah, I think that post-game press conference on Sunday was important. He didn't come into the press room on crutches. Wasn't seen to have a big ice pack in that area. Seemed to be moving around okay. And then we got reports from the major media members that his MRI on Monday didn't show anything significant. So it'd be nice to see him do a little bit, but player after player in Seattle gets a ton of veteran rest and comes back and sometimes even fully practice on Friday. That's what we saw from Jimmy Graham last week. We've seen it from Richard Sherman in the past. We're likely to see it from Earl Thomas again tomorrow. So that'll go a long way to making us comfortable with him. But you have to put him in a little bit different category, I think, because you would have hoped to have seen him do a little bit before now. Doesn't seem to be any concern. Pete Carroll hasn't had any big problems to say in the press conference, but I think we'll be okay.
Well, in game, Jamal Williams looks like that as he was getting pushed into the pile, he was getting bent back kind of funny, grabbing the back of his knee, and he's down on the ground.
Yeah, that's why I'm kind of stumbling around here. I'm trying to look at two things at once. I didn't really see that too closely. Maybe we'll get a little bit of a replay here soon, but didn't sound good, huh?
Yeah, so let's move. While you're getting that, let me ask you about CJ Prosise and staying in Seattle with the ankle injury. Is it possible that with him out and Carson probably still going to get all the reps, that maybe we can get some stem cell injections of Steve Wisniewski, Gene Upshaw, and I don't know, Tony Baselli, and put some stem cell injections into the Seattle line? Or is that a little too mad Dr. Frankenstein kind of thing going on?
Going to need something, I think, at this stage to make sure that things are moving through. But, it's not clear what Prosise's injury yet. I haven't had a chance to go back and review the All-22 to see if we can get a better look on it or not. But it's a concern. He seems, I don't think he's been officially ruled out yet, but for all intents and purposes, that's really been the way that the trend has gone this week. So when you get that kind of suggestion early in the week, you wonder if it's going to end up being a prolonged absence, a multi-week situation, if it's a high ankle sprain, something like that. The other reason you wonder here is that Seattle's bye is coming up in week 6. So with him being ruled out this early, you kind of have the sense that we may not see Prosise again until week 7 or beyond.
Bloom brought up Sunday night, so I'm going to bring up Monday night, which you know where I'm going, because I'm going to ask about Jordan Reed. And hopefully anyone out there that's maybe thinking Reed could give it a go. It seems like he's doing a little bit more this week than he did last week. You better check your waiver wire, make sure Vernon Davis is out there, make sure your league rules allow you to pick someone up in case of emergency, break glass, and here comes Vernon Davis. But it actually, the glass is Jordan Reed.
Yeah, you don't really have any options, as far as hedging other than Vernon Davis, because, the other tight end involved on Monday night is Travis Kelce, and he's certainly not going to be sitting out there. And maybe you're lucky enough to have acquired both Reed and Kelce in some dynasty leagues and have some options, but it's likely that you're going to have to go in a different direction if there's any concern at all. You're exactly right. He did a little bit more in practice in individual drills, was a little bit more active doing some more today than what he did this time last week. But I don't think anybody wanted to commit to him being likely to play on Monday as of today, the first day that Washington's been able to practice. Washington's bye week is week 5. So very similar to Randall Cobb playing tonight. You can look at this situation as last week they decided to rest him so that he could play, on an extra week of rest in time for Monday night, knowing that the bye week was coming, or maybe they've already decided that they want to allow him to rest as much as possible and rest him through the bye week so that he's got very little chance of an aggravation after that. I think the increased practice today is with that in mind. If we see him do little or less tomorrow on Friday than he did today, then I think you can probably bet that he's going to miss this week's game and they're going to keep him out through the bye week. If he does at least as much and more, they're probably preparing him to play knowing that he's got 2 weeks to recover afterwards. So tomorrow is going to be the key day here. If he does a little bit more, if he responds to what he did in practice today favorably, then there's a good chance he plays.
Do you know I'm going to see Sam Bradford? I mean, is it Case Keenum's team now? Case Keenum taking them all the way to the Super Bowl?
No, but it'll be. I don't know. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think even if it becomes a little bit of an extended absence, then it's going to be where is Teddy Bridgewater in his rehab, and is Teddy Bridgewater a better option than Case Keenum? And we'll sort of see how that goes. But this is something we talked about on Sunday too. After we got the news last Friday that Bradford went to go see James Andrews for a second opinion, and the thought was, well, either he got a really good report and they're going to allow him to continue to practice while he rehabs, or they're going to say, you know what, it's just better to rest, to shut this down, to limit the risk of any cartilage issues moving forward around the bone bruise, and we'll see where we are after that. And that's what's taken place. So when he didn't practice yesterday, you knew he was going to be out this week. There was no chance of him coming back to practice on Thursday and Friday if he wasn't doing anything on Wednesday, knowing that they weren't preparing for him to be in the game plan at all. And so now the question becomes, is he going to be able to go the following week? Or are we going to continue to let him rest? And if it's the type of bone bruise that is not going to allow him to get back in 3 weeks, then it's something that could easily linger to 4, 5, 6, and beyond. And then it becomes, all right, well, Bridgewater is going to be eligible to practice very soon leading into week 6. And are we going to have a little bit of a three-headed monster here in a race to see who gets healthiest quickest? So I think the very earliest we'll see Bradford is obviously the week after this, but you're probably looking at week 6 and possibly a little bit after that too. Hopefully Aaron Rodgers doesn't get broken with his 5 tackles missing here, but
or the Vikings could just let Kyle Sloter play.
Yeah.
Man, that was pretty close, actually. After you just said that about Aaron Rodgers.
Well, I was watching. I think I'm a little bit ahead of you.
Yeah.
And Aaron Rodgers gets tackled from behind like this a lot. He got his ankle going in the right direction rather than the high ankle direction there, so it'll probably be okay. But
I missed when you were talking about, and you might have been talking about Kelvin Benjamin getting tackled backwards. You guys already talked about him, so tell me a little about Carlos Hyde if you had.
Well, yeah, so both of those guys I think are going to be okay. Benjamin was on the bike yesterday, which is different than a player just doing some light work on a rehab field. So when you see him in pads, ready to do a little bit, that suggests that they're probably ramping him up and keeping him in condition with the thought that he's probably going to be able to go. Now, all of that said, if his knee didn't respond favorably to his full practice today, we'll know that tomorrow and be a little bit concerned. But this is an indication that, like we talked about earlier this week, you don't really know what no structural damage means on the MRI. Generally, I think that's code word for ACL is intact and not too much other than that, or at least ligaments are intact. But it doesn't mean that there aren't bone bruises involved or cartilage issues involved or maybe minor meniscus tears that he wants to play through involved. And it definitely doesn't mean that there's no pain or swelling there. So it's nice to see him back on the field today. That means that it was just an awkward tackle and a little bit of a scare and no issues. So everything seems to be in line for him to be able to play this weekend, that if he's fully practicing tomorrow, there's probably not going to be much limitation we need to be concerned about either. Hyde's a little different situation. I feel better about him simply because when he came off the field the 3rd time last Thursday night, he just didn't look like he wanted to get back on the field at all. And that makes you wonder where the injury is and if it's something he's going to be able to overcome. And then he came back and had a very good game after that, and he's had the benefit of a couple of extra days to practice. He's been limited. There's not been a lot from San Francisco that gives us a sense of where he is in his recovery, but I think he's likely to play. And assuming he doesn't have something unusual happen in the early stages of the game, he's already proven that he can come in and out of series and take some hits to the hip and move through there a little bit. So I think he's going to be okay as well. I'm not too worried about either one of those guys.
Hits to the hip sounds like an oldie station. It's Dr. Jene Bramel, footballguys.com. Here we go. And we do have the chat room firing up, reacting to me. And Jason has a question that I have a question about. And Jimmy Graham, banged up last week. It was a dire situation. We'll see more of Luke Wilson. We did. But we also saw Jimmy Graham look pretty good, still dealing with injury. What in the world's going on, Dr. Gene?
I think he's got a low-grade high ankle sprain that he's going to continue to have to battle through. It's something that he knows how to play through. He's done it in the past. The Seahawks, allowed him to run routes that were he would able to be effective on last week. I thought he was gimping around and moving around a little bit with some difficulty last week, but he was still productive. And knowing that he was able to tolerate as many snaps as he did, as many targets effectively as he was, we have 7 catches or something like that last week, and some of them involved some lateral movement as well. Coming out of last week's game with no setbacks, another week of rest and continued rehab, and I think we're getting closer to the point where he's in a similar place to where Odell Beckham was last week, where maybe there's a little bit of limitation left over, but there's not too much to be concerned about with him at this point.
Gene, Jason Suspettis is calling me the hurly-gurly man with my Kate Original Samurai bun here, but I think there's a lot better chance for me to be singing in the recap if Sean Lee is out this week.
Could happen.
What do we know? What do we know about Sean Lee this week?
Just know that he's rehabbing. He's really not doing much in individual drills. They're trying to rehab him, but he's out on the field and testing things. So it's hard to know with Sean Lee because he's not. I don't think you can put him in the category of Jimmy Graham or Michael Crabtree, where we've seen these guys play through injuries in the past.
No.
Sean Lee's injuries have been severe. I mean, you can't play through a broken arm, can't play through an ACL. But there have been some soft tissue things with the foot that he hasn't been able to get through easily either. So Friday is huge for him. He has to be at least limited to have any chance of play. If he's not practicing, it's really hard to see him do much. And they're already looking at bringing guys up off the practice squad potentially and working out some other linebackers. So there's some concern. Anthony Hitchens is still dealing with his bone bruise, his tibial plateau issue that he had, and he's been limited in practice the last couple of weeks, but it remains to be seen whether or not he's ready to come back. That may play into this decision as well. If you see Hitchens full tomorrow and Lee is a DNP, then I think we have to be really concerned, especially if you hear that they've signed somebody on Saturday. But I think this is one that's going to go all the way through the weekend until his game time decision at best.
Well, let's stick with that topic. And instead of talking about Sean Lee, let's talk about the band that may accompany Bloom's yodeling there, which is John Sullivan.
I had no idea where you're going with this.
Yeah, okay. John Sullivan. Yeah. So is he someone that can actually help Bloom sing and tune, or is this going to be a mess?
I don't know yet. He was upgraded today to a limited practice. I think that bodes well for him. But he did not look comfortable after the injury at all last week. I don't think he played very much at all. So you got to see him do a little bit. This was probably another one of those situations where they're putting the player on the field, waiting for him to come back into the locker room on Friday, seeing how he felt overnight after he slept a little bit. And if he responded well, we're likely to see a limited or a full practice and he'll be good to go. If not, then he's going to come down to a game time decision. We do not get nearly the amount of reporting on the offensive line guys as we do elsewhere. So, until we get to game day, sometimes it's really hard to know that, Mike Upati is going to miss some time, or some of these other players are going to struggle a little bit. And I think that's where we are with Sullivan. I think you consider him a game time decision at this point, and hope we get a pretty positive practice report on Friday to work with.
It is the Audible Live Thursday nights right here at youtube.com/footballguys.dotcom. Back to the chat room and back to another wide receiver question. Has to do with Sammy Watkins. It's been a little bit quiet on our news wire in terms of Watkins. I believe he was observing practice. Dr. Gene, maybe even a little bit limited. Still in the concussion protocol at last check. Do we have any update there?
He fully practiced today. We've got both the Rams and the Chargers down out there on the West Coast now, and so there's 7 or 8 teams that don't get listed on the injury report until pretty late in the evening. Watkins was listed as full today. Now, it doesn't mean he was out there taking contact, and it is said that he's still in the concussion protocol, and I think what that means is they want to make sure that he responds well without any recurrent symptoms on Friday after his full practice. And if that's the case, the plan is to send both him and Tavon Austin to the independent neurological consultant, get them cleared for this weekend, and that looks likely to happen.
Gene, all the Bilal Powell, the Powell movement. We all want to join the Powell movement. And Matt Forte's turf toe. Is this going to be something where we can expect maybe not, Powell to be as good as he was during December of last year, but at least get the opportunity to do that? Eli McGuire aside, or is Matt Forte going to be annoying and play through this?
It was a little bit annoying in that he talked to the media today and at least left open the possibility for him to be able to play this week. But I think that's unlikely to happen. I think the way they were describing the toe injury in Rappaport earlier this week makes you think that unless he's really recovering quickly into tomorrow and feels good after what he was able to do in practice today, it's much more likely that we're going to see him next week rather than this week.
Tell me some good news about the Seattle Seahawks secondary with Earl Thomas and Richard Sherman.
Yeah, Sherman's been playing through whatever this issue is that's been limiting him a little bit over the past couple of weeks. He's got a number of veteran days off with rest and been able to play through things. The Seahawks pretty much said today that Earl Thomas is going to play. So, he goes in that category of a veteran who doesn't practice until Friday. And whether he's got a full practice or not, it sounds like the Seahawks are planning for him to go. And hopefully that proves to be the case. But Seahawks, they don't usually pull any lines on us as far as the way the injury situations go. Whatever they tell us is about to happen generally happens. Pete Carroll and the rest of the team is, they put the same 11 or 12 guys out there on defense every play anyway. So they're just going to tell you what's going to happen. And if they're there, they're there. If they're not, they're not. Just, do the best you can against us. And certainly seems like Thomas is going to go.
So they cheat on the field, but they don't cheat off it like other teams.
That one's all you, man. These bears are a mess. What is going on?
Cue the Trubisky as we'll make another round here with Dr. Jene Bramel, who is doing the rounds. Dr. Jene, I should have known when I named him my Motorboat Rookie of the Year before the season even started that Samaje Perine would disappoint in the tradition of Mikel LaSure. Not with the injuries of Mikel LaSure. But the point is this, Rob Kelley. Yeah, Rob Kelley and the ribs. What's the latest we know there?
I think the same thing. It really looked like he was close to playing last week. If they have any concerns about him with the impending bye week, I think Washington may rest him. There wasn't nearly I didn't see, the same level of positivity with Kelley as we did with Reed today, but I still think there's a better chance that Kelley plays than Reed plays. But again, with it being Monday night, we're just really early in the process, and I think we'll get some more comments. Gruden didn't have as much to say today as he did last week about those players. I think we'll know more tomorrow about where Kelley's going to go. I would tentatively say he's a little bit more to the probable side of questionable, but I think I would have thought the same thing this time last week.
Oh, sorry. How many of the most important players of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense are hurt, Gene? All of them. Is there any hope for any of these guys? I mean, Gerald McCoy, Quan Alexander, Brent Grimes.
Yes.
And I mean, not just will they get back on the field for the game against the Giants, but can they be remotely as effective as they usually are?
I think that depends on how effective Noah Spence can be through a shoulder dislocation and harness, and he's fully practicing, so that looks like a minor issue. They're going to get Jaquez Smith back. They're going to get Chris Baker back, which is going to be helpful. But, man, there is a lot of stuff you can do with Quan Alexander and Levante David in coverage, and those guys won't be there. And Kendall Beckwith has been playing well in Alexander's absence, but he is not the same caliber of player as those other two guys are. So you hope that Brent Grimes is healthier than he was last week and he's fully practicing. But they're not going to have TJ Ward is looking doubtful as well because he's not practiced for a couple of days. It is going to be difficult for them. So the front four are going to have to get home in the pass rush to be able to mask some of the things that's going on in the back seven. I don't think we're going to see Alexander for a couple of weeks. David certainly seems like it's going to be a month or more before we get him back. So they're going to struggle, I think, unless that pass rush can be really productive.
Are you saying start Eli Manning? Did Gene just say start Eli Manning?
I did not say any such thing. Start Eli Manning over Joe Flacco. How about that? That's not saying much.
Well, let's see. I thought I didn't miss my turn, but apparently I did.
Matt's over there pumping his fist, man. He's getting into this.
I know. I'm watching Aaron Jones score a touchdown. I'm watching
El Paso.
What are we down to the Packers on this Thursday night game? Do they have 37 players capable and dressed right now?
Well, at the running back position, they did because
linebackers too. I don't know if they have any linebackers left. Every time I look up, there's whether it's Jake Ryan or Blake Martinez or somebody else who they got playing linebacker now.
Yeah, I know. Martinez. It may not matter at this point. Because 21-0 in Chicago speak is actually 49-0. With this wide receiver core. So
is that like dog years?
Yeah, it is. It's bear years. That's basically what it is at this stage.
Fox years.
Yeah, it is. It's sad, but it's true, But yeah, I mean, tell me a little bit about what went on with this car accident with the Carolina Panthers, with Star Lotulelei and Julius Peppers.
Oh,
What's going on here?
Is that what that was? I didn't realize
Yeah.
that's what was going on there. I got distracted in a positive way when Lotulelei returned to full practice today. So, and Peppers has been missing. I didn't realize there was something more going on there. So, Peppers doesn't look like things have been going any different. Both him and Charles Johnson have been getting some veteran days of rest earlier in the week and then returned to a full practice, and that looks like the way it's going to go again for them this week. Peppers was back full today after his DNP yesterday, and so was Lotulelei. So he's listed as a shoulder injury. We'll sort of see how that progresses, but it looks like both of those guys are going to be able to go.
He is the great Dr. Jene Bramel. You can follow him on Twitter at Jene Bramel. You check out his work at footballguys.com. Dr. Jene, any recommendations for our man in the chat room, FQD 1911, because he's a Bears fan and he's feeling blue now.
Yeah, it's sad that you have to sit through multiple half times here to get through the end of this game. They've already had 15 to 30 minutes to try to do something a little bit different, and it's not going any better this quarter than it did the first. So, sorry.
John Fox do something different? Never. Never. Dr. Jene?
Yes.
You're good, baby.
Well done, boys. We'll see you next week. See you.
There we have him. Dr. Jene Bramel. Bloom, I don't want to give too much away.
Yeah.
But I must ask.
Oh, okay.
Because I noticed Matt's pumping his fist, right? And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, I see you, Matt Waldman. I see you. And you're watching the game, right? And I noticed, Sigmund, you're smiling. And I'll just say it, okay?
Sure.
Because there you have a reflection in your glasses, so you got to get the pro tip, right? Before I had my LASIK surgery.
I have a reflection in my glasses.
Are you getting a show? Are you
No.
Well,
the show is Aaron Jones. Actually, the reason that there's no Cecil, I'm not getting a show.
I've been wanting to ask that for 6 months.
No, actually, but yes, I do. This show is recorded in the bedroom, and my wonderful love of my life, fiance Kate Herrera, is from El Paso. And we've been following the career together of Aaron Jones on draft, the third day of the draft. Very excited to see him drafted. He's an El Paso native. I think John Skelton was the last El Paso native, El Paso High, going to high school in El Paso to make the NFL. So, we've been watching the Aaron Jones story, and it's been a pretty crazy turn of events for him tonight. So it's been very exciting to see him not just get on the field, but get his first Lambeau leap, get his first touchdown. And we're going to be talking about him a lot in the next week, apparently, is Jamal Williams. We barely knew you.
Stephen Montez is the next El Paso native to go to the NFL. Matt, let's talk about Aaron Jones. Let's go over some of your notes from the rookie scouting portfolio and just your thoughts now with this opportunity that he's getting.
Well, I was really excited about Jamal Williams, obviously, when he got drafted. But then when Aaron Jones got drafted after that, it was kind of like one of those situations where you go, if one of those guys gets hurt, it really doesn't matter. The other one's going to jump right in there. It's going to be that close. And what Aaron Jones has that Jamal Williams doesn't is burst and great ball tracking as a receiver. There's a lot more to being a receiver as a running back than just catching the football. There's lots of times where you see guys do some amazing stuff, but if they don't know how to run the right route and read a coverage, then, quarterbacks in the NFL aren't going to throw it up for grabs with them. But that said, Aaron Jones, in terms of just pure catching the football, if you put him in a contest with Sammy Coates, I would bet probably my house on Aaron Jones. And I would probably, it's just, and actually I'd probably put him up there with some receivers who actually are known for catching the football. He had won a lot of passes downfield on jump ball plays, fade route type of plays, as well as his ability to, just catch the ball in stride. But he also has great burst. He's a smart runner between the tackles. You saw the agility there. The issues with him really is he going to understand the passing offense as a receiver in terms of what his responsibilities are with reading coverage and pass protection. And if they can keep him protected from having to be, really directly responsible for Aaron Rodgers' safety, and I think that they will. You're seeing that they use Jamal Williams on backside blocks. And they also used Jones on backside blocks. He can be an effective runner for you. So he's certainly going to be a nice pickup if Ty Montgomery is out for an extended period of time. If he is, then this is a guy you're going to want to have because he can create for you. A great game that I'd recommend, and I have in the RSP film room, and I just tweeted some things out, some analysis on Twitter about him, some video, is him against Texas, because he's undermanned against Texas, and you can see him really showing the balance, the vision, the patience to set things up, and the ability to just kind of create on his own.
In a second gear or like a fifth gear, like it doesn't look it, but he has an acceleration that is surprising if he can get to the open field.
Yeah, he really does, and he's done it against top SEC teams, Big 12 teams, and there's some good tape out there with him against Arkansas where he does some phenomenal work, and also as a receiver. So, he's actually a better fit when you think about catching the ball and creating than what Jamal Williams was. It's just that Williams, is the better pass protector and the more powerful back, the earlier round draft pick. But they were pretty close, and Jones was a sleeper, definitely in my, listed in there. I had him ranked fairly high, so I'm looking forward to seeing how he does in pass pro.
By the way, Sincere Taylor says in the chat room, "Hey Matt, I love the 2017 RSP."
Thank you very much, much appreciated.
There we go. Sigmund, I hope your ears were ringing today, because I spent about 30 minutes talking to Jeff Legwald about C.O. Bricado stories. And they were great. They were great. Scouting legend, and God rest his soul, C.O. Bricado. I'll share those stories at a different time and a different show. But I want a game update from you, Sigmund, before we jump into a little game.
Well, Mike Glennon is Mike Glennon throwing an inexplicable interception. And, we did just have the deep ball to Jordy Nelson setting up the touchdown for Aaron Jones. Basically this is what we have. The Bears at home this year are going to be a surprisingly competitive team. They took Atlanta to the brink, should have beat Atlanta. And they had a classic Steelers loss on the road to a team that they are superior to. The Steelers having 3 or 4 really bad plays, not being able to do the one thing they need to do and stop Jordan Howard. Then you take the Bears on the road, and they look like one of the 5 worst teams in the NFL. And no, you shouldn't start Jordan Howard. And no, Mike Glennon looks like at any point now we need to see Mitchell Trubisky. And for those of you that started Aaron Rodgers or started any part of the Green Bay Packers passing game, you're sad because the Bears aren't good enough to make them put up a fight in the second half. And nobody's got Aaron Jones in their lineup. So this is going to be a pretty fruitless Thursday night fantasy game for most people, although it may go past midnight Eastern.
What's frustrating about watching the Bears this season thus far is that after they did such a great job with Tariq Cohen against Atlanta, they used him split wide. They ran different varieties of screen passes. They had him run routes both from the outside and also in the middle of the formation. Also had him work downfield and nearly catch a ball. It's like they forgot what actually worked with him after week 1. They pretty much at this point said, okay, we're just going to use you like every other running back we do. And it's just inexplicably bad. I don't get it. It's like, did they go, well, the defense figured out one of the routes that they did and held him in check. So let's just junk the whole game plan.
Somebody just reminded John Fox that Tariq Cohen is actually a rookie. So that's that. Sometimes, fellas, you need a little visual aid. So just because I see it sitting up here, I'm going to play a little game. And Matt, it's a trust game. So do you trust me?
Yes, I do trust you.
Thank you, brother.
Wrong.
Do you trust this guy in London? It's him away from the Superdome. But do you trust Drew Brees, Matt, this week in London? This is a very interesting one. A lot of fantasy owners will be wondering themselves because it is Drew Brees away from the Superdome. But what do you think this week?
Yeah, that's a great question. Do I trust Drew Brees? Yeah, I trust Drew Brees because it's Miami, and to me, they're a bad enough team that I think that Drew Brees will be fine. I think that, when I look at that as an overall kind of thing, yeah, there's, maybe he's worse statistically, but they make it seem like he's horrific statistically. When he's away from the Saints, he's not horrific. He's just not as good. But being not as good, Drew Brees, is kind of like Prince not being quite as good, at a live date as, maybe a solo act compared to the rest of his band. You'd still probably shell out $700 a piece to go see him do that live thing in the Fox, which I didn't do, and my wife's forever mad at me because then he passed away. God rest his soul. A couple weeks later, I'm never going to hear the end of that one. But yeah, I trust him.
What about Willie Snead, Matt? What about Willie Snead first week back?
I trust him too, because I think that he's more of a rapport player, a route player. I don't think the timing's going to be a big issue with him. I would feel good about doing that. And Drew Brees is going to be so excited about being able to actually set some things up that he and Sean Payton like to do all the time. It's going to be like Christmas Day for them, or a homecoming. They probably have been waiting forever to get Brandon Coleman off the field. So I think it'll work.
Reunited, and it feels so good. Bloom, now that we know a little bit more about Willie Snead and his practice participation, how do you feel about the receiver returning from suspension?
I wouldn't put him in the lineup this week. I think that we actually saw Ted Ginn get that first long touchdown last week. We've seen Brandon Coleman do some things. Alvin Kamara is involved. Kobe Fleener not as involved. And we actually saw Michael Thomas treated like a number one wide receiver last week. 5 catches for 50 yards and the touchdown on the first drive. They had him established. I think the big question here is really more, what will Miami do? So if you think Miami and Jay Cutler can trade punches with Drew Brees and turn this into a 35-31 kind of game, then that's a Willie Snead game. But if Jay Cutler and company react the way they did against the Jets last week, then this is not going to be a Willie Snead game. And what I'm going to be watching is and it's funny how hindsight is, because the London Jaguars, but this is a team that is very accustomed to going to London. So in hindsight, it shouldn't have been as shocking that they just blasted the Ravens away in that game. Now this week, the Saints, I believe on Monday, flew straight to London. And the Dolphins are flying out tomorrow night. So that also doesn't make me feel great about it being a competitive game or a Willie Snead game.
Bloom, you get a visual aid now.
Oh, okay.
Because if we talk about players that you can trust, and the chat room was talking about this earlier, in terms of Ben Roethlisberger on the road. Okay, well, what about the super freak alien? What about Martavis Bryant? Because you're going to trust Antonio Brown, of course, but what about Bryant this week?
No, and I think that as goes Ben, so goes Bryant. And on the road against the Ravens, a salty Ravens team that's not going to be very happy. They're going to take out their frustrations of getting humiliated by the Jags, getting humiliated by Blake Bortles. They're going to take that out on the Steelers. And I do think this is a topic that's been coming up and something we have to really start to weigh, that, is Ben Roethlisberger in his decline phase. And maybe it isn't just that he's a drama queen, that he keeps bringing up retiring. Maybe he's aware of where his game is at this point. So Rich Rebar did bring up the interesting split that it isn't just road games, it's road games with early starts where Roethlisberger's had trouble. Actually, the late start road games, the night road games, he's been all right, but this is an early start road game. So I'm going to go with that trend, as mysterious as it seems, and especially until we see Roethlisberger look the way he has at his best, even in the last few years. We haven't seen that, not even in the Minnesota game, which they were able to win because they had Case Keenum running scared.
It is the Audible Live Thursday nights here on youtube.com/footballguys, TOTCOM. And Matt, it is a Broncos show, but let's talk Raiders. And let's talk whether or not you trust Michael Crabtree and Amari Cooper. Now, if you get points for drops, then Cooper is your guy. But in this matchup against Denver, you think no-fly zone. You think, uh-oh. But as Sigmund pointed out on Twitter, and as I ripped off and used as a question for defense coordinator Joe Woods today, they've allowed four touchdowns to wide receivers this year so far. Last year, that total was what, Bloom? 7? Is that right? Did I get that right?
Yeah, you got it right.
7 to wide receivers in a year. It's 4 already. What in the world's going on? I asked Woods if teams were attacking him differently. He said no. Essentially, short answer, he just said we got to play better. So, Matt, this is a big one in the AFC West. It's on the road for the Raiders. We saw him on the road last week, and it wasn't so very good. So, Carr, Krabby, Cooper, where on the Matt Waldman trust scale are they?
I trust them pretty well, actually. I mean, I think this is a game that I would feel good about them because even though it doesn't look like it when you look at the stats and the matchups, good cover corners, they still struggle against good route runners. And Michael Crabtree and Amari Cooper have that athletic ability and the route running acumen to be still very strong players. And I think that this is a team that, has good balance. Usually teams don't play very well when they travel across the country on a road game, so they're going to be a little closer to their own home time zone. I'm sure that, the Raiders might even joke around that the Denver Broncos is their second home. Fans may not like that very much, but they may feel, I think all division teams kind of feel that way when they go to a team that they play twice a year. They're pretty familiar with everything. So I actually wouldn't, I don't know. I would feel less trust, obviously, for Cooper, but at the same time, the drops to me, they were an issue the first year. They weren't an issue last year. Now they've cropped up again. I do expect him to get better and to improve his focus and to kind of straighten this out. So while it's a tough matchup, these are guys you drafted pretty highly. I'd feel good about them. And I have to ask you, Cecil, that alien picture kind of looked like Jerry Jones. Kind of like Jerry Jones. Maybe that thing into him in the owner's box with some weird sunglasses. Maybe he just had his eyes dilated or something,
Right. I'll never look at Vic Rattlehead the same again. It is the Audible. We get a little silly on this one. Yeah, Bloom, what about Marshawn Lynch and the declining role?
Yeah.
And this matchup's terrible for him.
Right.
And I'm not starting Marshawn Lynch in the leagues that I've got him, but I'm really concerned that they're starting to use more of DeAndre Washington, Jalen Richard when he's not hurt as well. And it seems like if they're going to have to play catch-up football, Lynch isn't going to be a part of that.
You're right. And I think that you have two different questions here. One is we're using Lynch this week, and I think after what Denver did to 3 very good running backs this year so far, the answer is no. Are we worried about Lynch this year? I think the answer is no. Look, the whole premise of taking Marshawn Lynch is that Latavius Murray turned this role with both Jalen Richard and DeAndre Washington getting over 100 touches last year into low running back one numbers. It's based on the offensive line. It's based on the prowess of the passing game. In some ways, it's based on some suspect things in Oakland's defense. So they're going to play high-scoring games. And we look over Latavius Murray's game log last year. In the first 4 games, he had 14, 8, 10, and 8 carries. But in games they were controlling and not pulling away like they did against the Jets, you have 18 carries against Jacksonville, 20 carries, and 3 touchdowns against Denver when they really asserted, their supremacy in the division there. 20 carries against Buffalo, 22 carries against Kansas City. So 19 carries against Carolina. It's there. It's going to be there. What has happened to Marshawn Lynch? The good news is Marshawn Lynch looks like Marshawn Lynch. Just my son. It's the same guy carrying 3 tacklers. It's the same guy. In game 1, he just didn't get a chance to score a touchdown. They threw 5 passes to Amari Cooper in the red zone at once, and he dropped 4 of them. They didn't really give Lynch a chance to score a touchdown in that game. Game 2, he scores, but he's dancing on the sidelines by halftime, a little after halftime, because the game's out of hand. And last week, the game was out of hand by halftime the other direction. He was sitting there with his beanie, his tassel cap, his ski cap on, because he knew he wasn't going to get back in the game. So the game script just hasn't been there. So he is a game script dependent running back, just like Latavius Murray was last year. So this week, no. But over the course of the year, everything is just fine. And a couple hours ago, it said trade Ty Montgomery for Marshawn Lynch and a number 1 wide receiver, but that's not going to work out. Still, try to trade for Marshawn Lynch, especially after this week.
But at the same time,
what about a sneaky? Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, but at the same time, one thing that may also be happening is he hasn't played football in over a year and a half. So maybe I think they're just giving him a chance to kind of rest, to kind of get acclimated without getting hurt, or is trying to minimize the chance of injury with overuse early on and letting him kind of really work into that spot. And part of it too, maybe like, look, we know what happens at the end of the season. Teams get tired. They're all banged up. They get hurt. The arms get shot. Players, everyone seems to know what everyone else is doing. And then it's about attitude and really power and wearing people down. So I think somewhere around week 9, week 10, we're going to see Marshawn Lynch like a freaking bulldozer, and they're going to start that thing up. And I think you're going to be very happy having Marshawn Lynch between weeks 9 and 16 of your fantasy season. And I would not be surprised at all if he has a couple of 120-yard, 150-yard type of days with 20, 25 carries. And the Raiders just bulldoze the AFC West on their way to a division title.
Lynch has the ability to get 1,000 yards rushing in 8 games. So do it in the final 8 games.
Yeah.
And there we go. By the way, I do know some of the security guys at the stadium. I know how to make Marshawn Lynch not want to play. Put a fat head of Russell Wilson in his locker. It is the Audible. And Matt, KT has a question, and it's a kind of a sneaky play. And I've actually been considering this for DFS, but would you be willing to play Kaiser versus Cincinnati? Seems like a week to play him. If you want to get crazy, if you want to get out of the ordinary, well, what are your thoughts on the Browns against the Bengals this week?
Well, if there's one player that you're going to want to play, it would be him, just because he's going to have the ball in his hands the most, and he can run. He's had some rushing touchdowns. You know that he's accurate out on the perimeter and deep, and with a deep ball, he's able to work against pressure, step up, and make the throw. So the bigger question is, will he be able to throw it 50 times so that his receivers can catch it 18 times? And if they can do that, considering that Kenny Britt can't catch a cold, Ricardo Lewis, can barely catch the flu. And then you have, the one guy that can catch was Casey Williams, and they had him inactive 2 weeks ago. If they can get him active a little bit more, that might work out. We saw what happened with Rashard Higgins. That may bear some fruit occasionally because he's the slot receiver, and he hasn't proven he can separate in the NFL at a level that I think is worthwhile to have him. But what's there? Njoku, yeah, I guess if they use him enough. DeValve, if they use him enough. Duke Johnson, yes. None of those guys I want to start, but Kaiser, if you're desperate, at this stage, and you need a matchup play, or you're down a big amount, and you just feel like that this could be a high upside pick, sure, what the heck, take a chance.
Bloom, super quick. Austin Williams asked, who's the next QB for the Steelers? Not Landry. And I would start that hashtag, not Landry. Yeah. But I'd also say not Dobbs, because you can be an egghead. It doesn't make you a good quarterback. And anytime I see Josh Dobbs, I think of Foghorn Leghorn, because as everyone knows that listens to the show, Looney Tunes is always on my mind. And I think of the little boy that his girlfriend had, the little egghead boy with the big glasses, and he shows him the baseball, and he puts it in his mouth, and he goes, what? You never played baseball? That's what Josh Dobbs reminds me of, because the little egghead quarterback, he is a literal rocket scientist, but I don't think he's the future quarterback of the Steelers.
Can we bring back Charlie Batch or Bubby Brister? Mark Malone? I don't know.
You guys can have Cody Kessler.
I hope the Steelers have an idea here, because you've got the prime of Le'Veon Bell's career. If they sign him to a long-term contract, you still have Hall of Fame years left from Antonio Brown. You have this offensive line. Maybe they should sign Colt McCoy. I don't know. It's a problem though, because with Ben Roethlisberger talking retirement every year and the way he's playing, the future is now. And we know Roethlisberger's going to miss some time this year too, at some point, if previous years are any indication. So this question might become very relevant for fantasy football very soon.
Well, an irrelevant question, Matt, as he's subliminally suggesting things. We keep getting Josh Gordon questions every week in the chat room. Matt, what are your now? Take it easy, Matt.
Me, I swear.
Okay.
Wasn't me fueling that one, that's for sure.
Okay.
I still do have him on a couple dynasty rosters. So, if that, I got there's my snap signal right there is the, for Josh Gordon. But yeah. What I'd say is that there are some people who think, and of course they're Browns fans. So to me, I would say take this with a huge grain of salt. They think that, on a scale of 1 to 10, the likelihood of him playing again this year is a 5 to 6. So what you're getting is a coin flip, which seems to me like a pretty safe play. At that point, I'm not going to recommend taking him in a redraft league, picking him up at this stage, but you need to hear more to the story about really what's going on with him. And, all we know, all the details that we know right now don't really tell us anything that's really going to be insightful enough for us to do anything more than guess. So if you're, wait a couple more weeks, let's see how it goes, see how your team is. And then if you're looking for a point where you're like, my team's going down the crapper anyway, let me see if I can just hold on for dear life with hope that, that anybody might save me. Well, Josh Gordon could be your guy at that point.
When a quarterback doesn't look like himself, look at his mechanics first and foremost. And watching Derek Carr last week, I noticed that his feet were god-awful. His base was actually way too narrow, and not just on the plays where he had to get a little skinny to make a throw, but even when things were blocked and he wasn't getting pressure, his feet were off and his passes were off. And when they were on, then Mark Cooper would drop them. But we have an interesting question from Jordan in the chat room. Are there any specific technique problems with Russell Wilson missing high, Matt? Have you seen anything from Russell Wilson examining his mechanics this year?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think that some of those plays you're going to be prone to be inaccurate when you're playing on the move, or that you have to move laterally while you're throwing. And some of that happens with him. Another is that because when you're throwing on the move that you may overstride. And when you overstride, sometimes you're not able to get your hips to rotate fully through. And when that happens, the ball sails. Another issue may be what Carson Wentz does a lot, which is when you stride through your release, you basically the midpoint of your back foot isn't pointing in the direction it should be, and you've opened up your hips too early. And sometimes when you're anticipating the rush and you step with that front foot and your hips are open a little bit too early, the ball also sails because you're not able, again, to fully rotate your hips and in a coordinated synchronized fashion with your upper body. And so, that's big Carson Wentz problem. Those can be some little things that happen with Russell Wilson, on top of the fact that because he's short and he's got, 6'6" linemen in front of him, and then guys with their hands up, and he's trying to throw over that line, that can also be problematic, being, 5'10", 5'11", whatever he is.
Bloom, what are the chances that Trevor Siemian's the best fantasy quarterback play this week?
He could be a top 10 play against Oakland because of Oakland's defense, because of how he played the first few weeks. But I saw him reverting back to some of the red zone troubles he had. And I would say that Denver, with the running back play they've had coming on, with the way that they should be able to handle Oakland's offense based on the way they played against them in the past, should keep it conservative. And I actually have Trevor Siemian at quarterback 20. This week, I think they're going to keep his attempts low. I think the fact that it's a home game means that they're not going to have him have to stick his neck out too much for them to win this game. And I would probably look elsewhere for my quarterback play this week.
Bloom, give us a game update as we tie a bow on this great show.
Yeah, it's a wide receiver touchdown for the Bears, if you can somehow believe it, as Kendall Wright gets a touchdown at the end of the half there. Tariq Cohen had a catch down inside the 10. So Mike Glennon actually had a good drive. Mitchell Trubisky fans, doing enough maybe to stave off Trubisky for a few more weeks. But at the same time, the good news is for Green Bay Packers, offensive players in your fantasy league, it's 21-7 at the half, which means we should see at least 2 more Aaron Rodgers touchdown drives in this one.
And Gerald asks, Matt, can Leonard Fournette make Blake Bortles a real quarterback?
No, but Blake Bortles still has a chance to make himself a real quarterback. And It has been a little bit more helpful because you have a running back who's able to play with conviction through a crease, and that sets up the play action game. The defense is playing well. So all these factors are clicking in play where you're getting a guy who actually can execute this offense on a manner that are more to his strengths with disguising his weaknesses. So I think that there's still an opportunity there for him to be a good fantasy play, even though, the world has written him off like they write off quarterbacks every year who come back to bite them in the hind parts. And we all laugh at our own humility and how we get humbled each year that way.
No lightning delay on this show. And Bloom, final thoughts as we send fantasy owners off for the week.
Yeah, final thoughts. I mean, there's some things we can still count on when the Bears go to Lambeau. Aaron Rodgers and company are going to have an easy time of it. The turn of events with Aaron Jones tonight should remind us, and it's only week 4. See, this is something we've talked about a lot on the waiver wire show. Third string running backs, fourth string. See, we didn't get to ask Matt Waldman about Devontae Mays, the physical freak. Fourth string running backs, 0th string running backs, guys that aren't even on a roster right now are going to matter in fantasy football leagues this year. It's how quickly things can change. Aaron Jones, I guarantee you, on, I don't know the percentages, less than 5% of rosters, only the deepest of deep leagues and redraft leagues. It's going to be the talk of fantasy football pickups next week, and that's why no matter you're 0-3, maybe if you're 0-3, you're dead in the NFL. But in the NFL, you can't cut the whole roster and get a brand new roster. You can do that in fantasy football. And if you're 0-3 in fantasy football, the season is not over. Things change very quickly. It might have been your team stepping on the Allen Robinson or David Johnson landmines. It's someone else's team stepping on the landmines this week. And if you hang in, you can be rewarded.
Matt Waldman, final thoughts as we come together to celebrate this great game.
That's right. I would say, continuing on Bloom's theme there, one of the things that you're going to want to watch specifically for these types of changes is the offensive line, the health of offensive lines, whether they're getting healthy or whether they're losing guys. Because if they're getting healthy, that may help players who are off to slow starts. And also players who are off to hot starts, if those guys get hurt and stay hurt, we may see a bunch of people going, well, they were great, and then they just stunk, and they showed what they really were. No, it's about the offensive line because, they constitute, 5/11ths of the team, and maybe, and if we probably wouldn't even weigh every player equally. So considering that they impact the player who has the most weight, the quarterback, and then on top of that, all 5 of them together, probably are a little heavier weighted than, say, your third wide receiver or your tight end in the lineup in most situations. You need to pay attention to that stuff. So I recommend Matt Batante and Justice Mosqueda's work in the trenches. Definitely check that out every week at Football Guys, and and learn a little bit more about O-line play. And just at the worst, just keep track of who's healthy and who's not, because that will probably help you make decisions on players.
He's Matt Waldman. You follow him on Twitter at Matt Waldman. Sigmund is at Sigmund Bloom. The show is at The Audible. Dr. Jene Bramel is at Jene Bramel. It's with a J. And I'm at Cecil Lammey, not Steve Salami, although I think there is a Twitter of that.
That's part of the show coming up later tonight.
Is that your wrestling name?
I shouldn't have got him started. I just saw the reflection, and I'm
starring Steve Salami.
That was Sisters of Anarchy 3. Anyway, we're dirty old men. You rock for watching and listening to this show, and we appreciate each and every one of you. For the great Sigmund Bloom and the fantastic Matt Waldman and Dr. Gene's no slouch either, I'm Cecil Lammey saying, I drive a Shelby. Stay tuned and stay frosty.